I was not able to navigate the tank or ship in the right or left direction in the simulation project. Alright, so I think you guys can see it. So what I'm going to do now is, this is the basic tank simulation that we taught, that is taught in ACP itself. So I'll just quickly open up the chaos tank to kind of give you guys a much more better idea or a better understanding to kind of figure out why the issue could maybe happen to some of you, wherein which you can't move left or right on the tank. So this similar problem also occurred with the helicopter. Some previous students did have that. So there was another solution for that. You can definitely check that out on our YouTube channel. The answer to that is also pasted. So now when it comes to the tank, there are some few different changes that you might want to try to achieve to kind of fix that particular issue, why it might not move left right. So in my case, in my case it basically works. But some few ideas is, the first thing is you might want to try this option or this blueprint node called wake rigid bodies or wake all rigid bodies, and make sure you select the mesh option and not the box option. So basically what this does is, it's basically written in the definition itself. If you highlight over the node, ensure simulation is running for all bodies in this component. Now in this case, the mesh is basically a reference to the vehicle mesh, which in our case is the tank over here. So by kind of doing this, you're typically going to wake up all the different types of bones in the skeletal mesh. And waking up basically does what is, it kind of activates all the bones to kind of start basically moving to however you want to, kind of in the direction that you want it to work. So you typically would want to put this in your event tick. So you can, I think I already have an event tick in this. Yeah. So in this event tick, maybe towards the end somewhere over here, you might want to just get this particular node and just plug it in here. So every event tick, it would wake up the rigid body. So you can try this, and by default this would 100% work. However, this is not a very optimal solution for for waking up the rigid bodies, because you just need to wake it up once. But for trial purposes, you can put it in event tick to make sure that this is what is the issue behind it. And later on, what you want to do is, you can simply just put it in begin play, which is I think somewhere around here. Okay, I did not define a begin play in this, so you can just simply call in the event begin play, and you can just drag and drop it here. So at the start of your game, your mesh would be activated automatically, and then everything should work. Now this is one particular solution to this problem, in which your tank might not be moving left or right. So this could be the issue behind it. However, if you can share the blueprints of the tank simulation, it would be better, so that I could kind of understand how to give you a better solution. Now the other solution for solving the problem in which you can't turn left or right is, once again, checking your wheel setups. So your wheel setups could also cause an issue. Maybe you might not have defined the array elements correctly. So the order, basically you have to make sure to follow this particular order and you do have to make sure that your offsets and all that is perfectly checked and stuff. And it is definitely taught you guys in ACP how to achieve this. So I'll just quickly share how my setup kind of looks currently. So maybe you can refer this again in your blueprint to see whether it matches this hierarchy. So basically the hierarchy is always left wheel, right wheel. That's the format. And you kind of start from the first wheel, second wheel, third wheel, and you just kind of follow the skeleton tree to kind of make sure that that whole hierarchy is kind of maintained. And yeah, so just going to open it all so that you can see it. So yeah, you can see that it pretty much follows. And this 0 and 7 is not in order. That is because the wheel 0 is basically the front and back wheels respectively, because these wheels have two different properties that are applied in the blueprint. So hence they are kind of added towards the end. But yeah, this maybe you can try this order to make sure that it works. However, it should usually work regardless. Now, another thing that you might need to check is that in your vehicle component itself, there might be some properties that might not be set correctly in terms of adding the velocity or the mass of that particular tank. In some cases, your tank might have a very great mass such that you won't be able to move left or right. So what you can do is, again, I'm in my vehicle movement component right over here. You can simply just check some important values. The first one is in your steering setup. Just make sure, so since the problem is with relation to steering left and right and not forward or backwards, you want to kind of make sure that your steering setup is kind of proper. So I've gone with the angle ratio steering type. So angle ratio is kind of the best possible option. So as you can see, the three options are given here and what they do. So your single angle, basically both the wheels steer by the same amount. In the angle ratio, the outer wheels on the corner steer less than the inner ones by a set ratio. And the third one is the Ackermann, in which the steering principle is applied. So I've not used the Ackermann steering type basically. So you can kind of experiment between the single angle or the angle ratio and kind of get how it works. So chances are maybe you might have a very less angle ratio, so that's why your wheels might not be turning left or right. So just make sure that you have a good angle ratio. And secondly, you do want to check your steering curve to kind of make sure that it has a similar setup to this. And yeah, that is another thing that you might need to check for your left and right steering issue. And finally, the last thing is just check your vehicle setup. Make sure that your mass is maybe like around 1500. So this is default set as 1500. It's like the ideal one. But also just maybe try to reduce it and see if that does any changes to your setup. Maybe you can add, make sure that the reverse as brake is true. Also make sure that these various different types of chassis width and height is changed. And another problem that I think might be an issue is also the drag coefficient, which is the force resisting forward motion at speed. So maybe that could also be the issue when you're turning left or right. So try to maybe change these values up to also see whether your tank can move or not, depending on all these values. And finally, in your arcade controls, you also do want to make sure that your torque scaling is also set up properly. So the reason that your vehicle moves is basically based on the torque itself, the yaw torque and all that stuff. As shown in the blueprint, we are using this yaw input to basically move the steering and the throttling. So you also want to make sure that this value is set properly. This could also be a possible issue why your tank is not turning left or right. So you might want to maybe increase this particular value, something maybe like 5 or 6, to see basically adding more torque to push your tank, maybe because the mass, there's not enough torque to kind of handle the 1500 mass in your system. So you can try to increase the torque as well. And yeah, that should pretty much be it. Once again, I'm just scrolling through all the properties in my vehicle component, so you can just kind of identify maybe if you might have made some different change somewhere, and accordingly you can just quickly change the respective property. But yeah, when it comes to the tank steering issue, these could be the various issues for what problem you might be facing. So that is pretty much it for this question.